He always thought that everyone had at least one talent. A bloody massacre was unfolding on the battlefield. He just hasn't found his yet. And he would have found it soon, but that hasn't happened yet. A man with a cigarette in his mouth and his hands in his pants pockets turned to the guy and asked what such an F-rank piece of shit like him had left here. If he doesn't have any talent, then at least let him know his place. A girl with short blonde hair and a red sundress told the guy that she wanted to break up with him. What kind of talent can there be in a world that doesn't give losers like this guy a chance? He doesn't need it. Do you know what is better than talent? These are connections. The guy stood with a sword in one hand, with a shield in the other, and said that all his 990,000 past lives were watching him. He began to list all the talents he had in the past, and the possession of a shield, and fencing, and singing, and even his physique. A request to calm down from a certain sir hung in the air. The immortal emperor is watching him. Hasishin, the master of shadows, is watching him. Danzing, one of those who could not escape, is watching him. Reaper, a murderer steeped in blood, is watching him. The guy stood in a belligerent stance while there were many souls behind him. He asks someone behind him if he thinks it's time to win after 990,000 attempts. The guy was told that if it was him, then he could win over these damn bastards. Then go ahead. The wretched F-rank hunter Kang Hyun-jun, who has awakened for the 990,000th time. Green-fanged orcs with bats rushed into battle with the guy. His adventure begins right now. The guy was indignant. How did it happen? That everyone died except him, an F-rank hunter. The guy was sitting on one knee, and there were only skeletons around him. He doesn't see a way out. The entrance to the dungeon has suddenly closed, and what high-ranking monsters have forgotten here in general. But he doesn't want to die senselessly in this place. If only he had that incredible strength, then he would have at least some chance. Suddenly, something congratulated him on seeing his craving for life. His past life went beyond the limits and independently intervened in the situation. The guy didn't understand where this voice came from. Sidon Miller, the last patron of the sword, descended to the guy. The guy, eyes bulging, was surprised to see the blonde from his dream. It seems to be one of his past lives. Inside his body, the dark-haired man put his sword arm forward. From somewhere in the back of his mind, he could hear voices. Someone was calling him. The F-rank was asked to get up. Barely opening his eyes, the guy took a heavy sigh and abruptly sat down, while shouting something about his life. Someone shouted that this clown stupidly escaped while they were clearing the dungeon, and then just fell asleep. The bald man turned to the guy sitting on the floor that he didn't want to say this, but they don't have so much money to give to small creatures like him. If he wakes up, he should get out of here faster and let him no longer look for another team. The brunette stared at the bald man in incomprehension, asking what he meant by saying that they didn't have much money. In response, they just laughed in his face. It turns out that he is not F-ranked, but F-retarded. He was wounded in the dungeon, and then he drank all their potions. The wounded guy was barely walking, holding his hand to his chest and thinking that he urgently needed to regain strength. They shouted after him and asked where he had gone. Then, a big rock flew into his head and he fell and passed out. Several people were already standing in front of him, and the bald man continued to say that they had spent a lot more time because of him. Does he even know how much all those potions he drank were worth? If he had any conscience, he would understand why he didn't get anything. While they were clearing the dungeons, what was he doing at all? The guy abruptly got to his feet and said in response that it was all because they told him to provoke all the monsters. He doesn't say that he did everything right, but not paying him is against the law. The bald man was surprised at such impudence in response and replied that the guy finally lost all the remnants of his brain after that strong blow. He mimicked the words of the brunette, saying that he said that although he was not F-ranked, but he could do anything. They should let him show them what he's capable of. The bald man pressed the guy. Weren't those his words before this someone joined their team? He was the one who said that being a bait would provoke monsters. But I couldn't even cope with this task. And even after they saved him from death, he decided to express his gratitude with such words. If he is still not satisfied with something, then let him go and report it to the association. Who does he think they'll believe? If he understood everything, then let him get out of sight immediately. While the bald man and the girl were leaving, she said that was why she told him that it was not worth taking an F-rank hunter. He listened to the guy's chatter for 30 minutes. Even her brother did not prepare such a long speech for his interview with the association. The guy at this time was sitting and clenching his fists with anger. He bowed to the backs of the departing, thanking them for the work done. A world in which raids, dungeons, and monsters appeared. People who had awakened abilities became hunters, clearing dungeons. Based on the level of their abilities and achievements, they were assigned ranks. The brunette is an F-rank hunter. In the world in which he decides everything, treating low-ranking hunters like trash was inevitable. But he's used to it. because even someone like him has a ray of light. Something was easy for him now. He was sitting at the table, leaning his head on one hand and looking with loving eyes at the most beloved person, Jin, his beloved girl, who was next to him. The brunette told the girl that he was very glad to see her. It's been so long, she's been busy all the time and they haven't even had time to go on dates. The girl, burying her face in the phone, replied with an impassive face that it was better than being unemployed. The problem is that only she was busy. The guy asked her for forgiveness for the fact that his rank is still too small, but soon. The girl suddenly interrupted him and asked Hyun-jun if he remembered that today is exactly a year since they were together. The guy replied that of course he remembered and he had prepared something for her. The girl interrupted him again and said that she had a meeting with another person, so let her hurry up. And she offered to break up. In a hurry, she got up and said she had to go. Hyun-jun grabbed her arm in an attempt to stop her, but the girl pulled away. She said that a year ago they both had the rank of F but now she has a C rank, so let him stop trying to pretend to be a hunter when he is completely incompetent, and let him know his place. He's too pathetic and he can't date him anymore. She doesn't want to have anything to do with a hunter of that rank. The guy sat on the spot and mumbled the girl's name so that she would not leave, but she only answered so that he would never call her again and left. Looking after the departing girl, the guy repeated all the insults she had given him and he thought that if he worked hard, he would eventually see the fruits of his labor. And in the end, everyone sees in him only an incapable loser. The brunette was sitting dejectedly at the table, folding his hands in front of him and looking at the phone, where correspondence with a friend who called him to meet was highlighted. Later, he was sitting on a bench when Seok-gu called out to him. A guy in a business suit with a jacket over his shoulder said hello, and said that he thought Kang Hyun-jun was dating his girlfriend today. So I asked the brunette if everything was alright. Hyun-jun replied with a barely noticeable smile that a lot of things had piled up today. Seok-gu asked what the brunette wanted from him and he replied that he just wanted to see a familiar face. He can't get the looks of people looking at him out of his head. That's why Seok-gu told him to work harder. Everything is fine only for those who are trying their best. The brunette angrily asked a friend, could he not scold someone who was already as desperate as possible? There was an open bottle of alcohol and a glass on a bench nearby. Seok-gu said that of course he understands that the guy has just been abandoned, but he stupidly sits opposite the Han River and pours soju into himself. He's something with something, seriously. Hyung asked if he knew what it was like to be so poor that he couldn't even buy himself a snack. Seok-gu replied, saying, okay bro, since he really wanted to see his Hyung, he would buy him something at the convenience store. And he also heard that the river is very cold, so let him not even think about something like that. The brunette replied that he didn't have the strength to do it anyway. Seok-gu is sure that Hyun feels worthless compared to a full-time employee in the Hunter Association like him. Therefore, let him relax, because he is only an F rank for half a bet. The sad brunette asked to stop pouring salt on the wound. Privately, he understood that even though Seok-gu said all this in jest, he was really right. He always thought that everyone had at least one talent, and he just hadn't found his own yet, but would eventually discover it. Even if he has no talent, but he tried to achieve something with his efforts and hard work. Did all his efforts make sense, or should he just give up? The guy sat and looked at the rosy sky until he was called by some blonde man with stubble. He said that he sees a huge potential in the guy, just looking at his face, even though he is not of high rank. The man asked if he believed in past lives. He feels the past lives of incredible people inside him. And these are not just past lives, each of them has the status of the strongest. The guy didn't understand what this man was talking about. He, in turn, called the brunette sir, that if he craves strength, then he should not have any problems, because even now the man sees past lives somewhere nearby. Hyun-jun didn't understand when these fanatics became so obsessed. The man said that if the guy does not believe him, he will soon understand everything himself. And he left. From the other end of the shop, Seok-gu sat down and asked what he was doing, what scared the guy. He bought all sorts of booze and asked a friend what that strange guy wanted from him. Hyun-jun replied that he didn't know, and a friend asked a friend if he believed in past lives. His answer was genuine surprise. In the White Cloud, it was said that they had learned about past lives that would now be watching them. Then came the enumeration of all the lives and the fact that they are being followed. Khan asked his friend if he had heard anything now, some pretentious voice. Seok-gu did not understand, and the brunette said not to take it into his head and asked if he had learned anything about the squad that needed porters, as he asked. The friend asked if he was serious then and why he wanted to do such hard work. Hyun-jun needs to pay his rent, and the shelter is having a hard time right now. Seok-gu said that there is some kind of squad, but the people in it are not very friendly. The brunette just needs money, and he thanked his friend for what he did. After a while, the guys were both drunk and shouting about something. While the brunette was entering the apartment code, he offered to have another drink, but he was reminded that he wanted to go to work tomorrow. So Seok-gu went home and waved to a friend. Hyun-jun opened the door and thought that even though he had one friend, he was the real one. And I also assumed what his name would be at his new job. He is ready to curry favor in full and become 100 times better. Suddenly, the guy was almost blinded by the bright light. He couldn't figure out where he was, but he was ready to swear that he was just going to his house. The tall, muscular man behind him was glad to see them. He had a golden helmet on his head. The guy asked the man who he was and where he was at all. The man introduced himself as Karsego, a shield of justice protecting the northern part of the kingdom, and his past life. What is this man talking about? The guy remembered the words of the man passing by, who allegedly feels past lives. Will it turn out that what he said is true? Karsego replied that it doesn't matter whether the guy believes him or not, because very soon he will feel everything himself. Now that he has paid attention to Kang Hyun-jun, even if his body is torn to pieces 1,000 times by a spear, he will still put his will into it. The guy doubtfully asked if Karsego was really his past life, then he doesn't understand anything at all. Karsego got angry, because even facing death, the guy continues to cheat. If he intends to mix their honor with dirt, then he will wash his ears in the guy's blood. Suddenly, a spear flew at the guy and hit him with all its might. He flew back a few meters while the man called him pathetic because he contorts his face from just one blow. Khan asked the man why he was doing all this. Such pain is like an old friend for this body, Karsego said. The guy was in so much pain and he was bleeding, so we need to get out of here before he actually died. Karsego told the guy that he was tormented by unnecessary thoughts. He should not be afraid of death, and pulled the spear out of the chest of the brunette. The guy could not believe that he was safe and not harmed. There was no trace of the wound on his body. That's because Kang Hyun-jun can't die here without a man's permission, even if he really wants to. These words made the guy uncomfortable. Does this mean that he will be tortured for eternity? He glanced at the door that had been there since he got here. He rushed to her, hoping to escape, which made the man angry. He shouted at the guy's back that because of the lack of strength to defend himself, he didn't even have the courage to face death. What a pity, having lost my love and honor. So let him go. Someone like this guy can't be a man's vessel. All this time the guy was pulling the door handle in an attempt to get out. Listening to everything that was said to him, the guy asked what he knew about him at all. He may not have the talents and skills, but there is hope that after many efforts, one day everything can change. In the guy's head flashed memories of how he plays with children, and they were very happy. For those who have no power, suffering is just suffering. No matter how bad he is, he won't be able to back down. Let Karsego not say anything if he does not know how to be powerless. How dare he say that if he doesn't know anything about the guy? The man was glad that there was fire in the young man's eyes. Since he is his past life, he has to give the guy his will, so that no one could take anything away from him anymore, and so that he could climb to the top. Other past souls started congratulating the guy. They will help him, but without tests, the guy will not be able to succeed. If he wants to gain strength, then let him fight with a man. Hyun-jun replied that he did not fully trust Karsego. He's not even sure if that's his past life, but if he can really get stronger. The man didn't care how much the guy trusted him. He should only know that he is the reincarnation of all past lives. He can only use any technique once to nullify the attack. The guy wasn't ready for the fact that it was possible just once, but he wanted to show his strength. However, from one blow, Karsego flew back. The guy couldn't even see his spear. The man stood over him and urged him to get up and continue fighting. Where did his fighting spirit go? The guy started losing his mind. How long has he been hanging by a thread from death? It seemed to him that everything was about to work out, but the spear pierced his chest 100 times. Karsego became sad that the spear was stabbed into the guy 25 times and he still can't use the shield properly. For such a weak one more time would be superfluous. He'll kill him. When the guy defended himself for the first time, he felt only fear. He still wasn't used to the disgusting feeling of being speared. But after countless encounters with death, he got used to the possibility of dying. The young man leaned down from the strong flow of fire in his direction and shouted to the man that he was blocking the shaft. Karsego praised the guy for his work and said that he used the basic 24 spear techniques and the ability to understand enemy attacks. When he wakes up from sleep, a lot of things in his life will change. A melody rang out in the room. Hyun-jun reached for the phone with a groan, lying on his stomach, and saw a call from Seok-gu, who asked how his hangover was, and he also said that there was a schedule and asked if everything would be alright with him and if he could pull such a job, because the dungeon is C rank. Hyun assured his friend that he needed money anyway and asked if he could go there now. Seok-gu sent him the address and information, and the guy should definitely review it before moving out. The brunette thanked his friend and suddenly thought about his strange dream in which he was pierced with a spear without a break. There are no wounds on him, but he still feels them. And to tell the truth, the dream seemed very real. Later, the guy was sitting on one knee near the door and straightening his trousers, rejoicing that the dungeon is not very far away. He saw the shield on the floor and wondered how long it had been there, because he hadn't seen it for a long time. He remembered the man's words from the dream and put the shield on his back. After some time, the young man was standing in a clearing and not finding anyone around. He thought that he had come first. Suddenly, he was approached and asked what he was doing here, and when Hyun-jun raised his head, he saw his ex-girlfriend. She asked him if he was stalking her. A cool guy in a red uniform approached the girl and asked Hyojin if she knew this guy. The girl took the jock by the arm and replied with a smile that nothing had happened and the guy was just annoying her. I asked Sang-chul Appa not to pay attention to him. With some unjustified anger, a tough guy approached Hyun-jun and cursed, asked why he had brought a shield with him. How is he going to carry mana crystals if he's carrying such a heavy shield? The brunette thought that this guy was a real bastard, and Hasishin, the master of shadows, seeing the evil in the guy, sends him congratulations. In fact, Hyun-jun apologized and said that he would be a porter for the first time. He looked at the gate that looked like the entrance to the dungeons. Meanwhile, the tough guy said he would enter first and started opening the doors, but Hyun-jun suspected something was wrong. It seemed to him that everything was happening as in a dream, and that he had a desire to kill. A spear flew past the other porters at the young man, which he stopped with one hand. He shouted for everyone to dodge and a powerful explosion rang out. When everything was in the dust, Karsego, the shield of justice, protects the young guy, and nothing can harm him. People were shouting around and everyone was asking each other if there were any wounded. There was a commotion and running around. One porter was injured and most likely dead because there was a direct hit. Skeletons with weapons appeared out of nowhere and a guy in a red uniform shouted to everyone to take cover because there might be another attack. No one understood why they were attacked as soon as they entered. These skeleton knights began to attack and a young man with shoulder-length hair threw a fireball at them. While one was down, he shouted to the rest of those present to attack with whatever they found. A major battle has begun. When it was over, tired people sat behind closed gates and thought about what was happening. It's very strange, because skeleton knights were supposed to be only in B-rank dungeons. Part of their team is dead. Probably the dungeon administration made a mistake. This happens sometimes. Most likely, this is an elite dungeon. Its rank is higher than C. The porter was able to somehow evade the attack. But with their forces, no one can go further. They should give up and go back. They can be punished for it, but it's still better than dying. Hyun-jun mentally recalled that he was saved by a mysterious voice. However, there is no guarantee that this will happen again. Suddenly, the guy turned around when he heard that the team was trying to open the door, but it was locked. The guy in the red uniform said they had no choice. If this is a dungeon with a door that locks after entering, they can only clean it out. God, of all possible scenarios. Hyun-jun's ex-girlfriend rushed to her appa and bleated that she was scared. He replied that he would definitely protect her. Hyun-jun watched the whole performance and was surprised that Hae-jin already had a new boyfriend. The plan was this: they would clean out this dungeon. They had to stick together. Then a halt was announced, but the guy with the gray hair ordered everyone to be silent. They heard noises, and out of nowhere those skeletons jumped out. The gray-haired man did not see them, and he was attacked by a skeleton with a sword. Hae-jin screamed loudly, and Sang-chul was very scared of her. The girl with tears in her eyes whispered that they were all doomed. They would all die a senseless death. She was as if in a trance and looked at one point. The skeletons kept advancing and advancing. Hyun-jun put his shield in front of him when one rushed at him. The skeleton's movements are simple, so he will be able to calculate them. Karsego training makes itself felt. You just have to fight back and aim right at the bullseye. Skeletons are very weak, so with one blow Hyun-jun hit him and he shattered into small pieces. Everyone was surprised by such a blow, including the girl. Hanjong was belligerently determined to win. One by one he defeated the enemies and in the end could not believe that he had managed. Jin stood and looked at the guy, couldn't believe it was really that F-rank guy. The guy turned to the girl and asked how the rest of the team was doing. It turned out that everyone had died and they were the only survivors. The girl asked the guy how he was able to defeat such high-ranking monsters alone, what he did for this and what is happening in general. The guy did not respond very kindly that she should be glad that she was alive at all. Jin reached out to him and started apologizing for being too harsh with him back then. Wouldn't he leave her? Because they love each other. They can do it together, right? The guy told her that of course he wouldn't leave her, but he was upset that even in such a situation Jin could only think about himself. He called the girl after him when he decided to go further. They were looking at the locked door and Jin asked the guy if he thought this was the end. He started to open the door when the girl asked him to be careful. In fact, it was just her insidious plan to get this brat's shield to protect herself. She will use it to get out of the dungeon alive. When the door opened, a large bridge appeared in front of them and the girl suggested that Zhang go through it first, because something might attack them from behind and she would look after him, and something else may pop up from below. The guy agreed to the plan, even though the girl was going to use him as bait. The guy walked across the bridge, drops dripped from him directly into the water, and when he was sure that everything was in order, he called the girl to follow him. She began to walk cautiously across the bridge. Until they get out of here, she'll just stick with the guy. Zhang is the kind of person who would do anything for her, just flatter him a little. She'll think about the rest as soon as she gets out of this place alive. While the girl was walking across the bridge, something with a big yellow eye woke up very close. Jin was walking across the bridge when a huge shark with many sharp teeth jumped out of the water from somewhere on her side, and after biting the girl's neck, dragged her into the water with her. The guy tried to help her, but it was too late. The voice in his head mocked the girl's death, because Zhang would never be able to get out of this place alive if he was so sensitive. Carsago and Sidon Miller believed that being morally stable is the only way. The guy crossed the bridge and opened a door. The voice in my head thought that the guy was still too sensitive and there would be some difficulties with this. But it's even wonderful, because spoiling a guy will be a lot of fun. But now Carsago has to leave. June was walking somewhere, and then suddenly found himself in a place, began to circle around himself and ask into the void where he was and where Jin disappeared. It was as if he had woken up from a dream in which his body was controlled by something else. He started knocking on the back doors, which closed again, and then turned around and saw a new batch of skeletons with burning eyes, ready to attack. The guy cursed and gripped his sword tighter in his hand. The skeletons surrounded the guy and he got ready for battle. One by one, he threw the skeletons in different directions with his shield. There was only dust and chaos all around. Already all wounded, the guy was sitting on the floor trying to catch his breath and could not understand how it all came to this. Everyone died except him, a guy of such low rank. Zhang doesn't see a way out, the entrance to the dungeon has suddenly closed, and in general, what are these monsters doing here? But if only he had that incredible strength, then at least he had a chance. Seeing his craving for life, his past life independently intervened in the situation. Sidon Miller appeared to the young man again, and announced to him that he was now in his body. In full combat readiness, Zhang got up from his knees and prepared for another attack from the skeletons. One of them swung at him with all his might with a sword. How dare such a small undead direct a sword into this body? What audacity! The guy made a retaliatory lunge with his sword. Suddenly everything around him lit up blue and some interference appeared. He didn't understand what was going on, and it turned out that Miller was leaving him with a promise to meet again. Jun fell senseless to the ground and lost consciousness. At this time, many people were sitting at a huge white round table, from the middle of which a bright blue light was emanating. Carsago hit him hard with his fist and was indignant why Kosashin went first, because it was his turn. A young man with white hair asked the interlocutor if he understood that this was a critical situation. It was Sidon Miller, and all the others were other past lives of the guy. The past life in the purple hood replied that he could not just stand and watch and asks to forgive him for his rudeness. Carsago, putting his hand on his forehead, said that he was the only one the guy needed right now. They understand that a guy has to train, right? He will never be able to grow up if they constantly help him. The girl in red clothes happily shouted that the microphone was working. Can she go too? She wants their reincarnation to hear her singing. But what's more important is, does this Kang Jun have any chance at all? Maybe it's better to just give up and sing. The guy in the hood, ignoring the girl, told Carsago to go, otherwise the number of their past lives would increase to 1 million. He thinks they should give this reincarnation a chance. Miller said that the guy has a pretty strong fighting spirit, especially for a child, but he does not agree with Carsago with his opinion about the guy. While everyone was busy talking, the girl ran away under the guise, flashing her lush red skirt. She thought only that these idiots could talk for ages, but what did she care? She, the magnificent hope, will solve everything peacefully with the help of the power of music. Carsago caught the girl and pushed her away from the door, saying that this time it was his turn. and he went out the door, closing it behind him. Hyun-jung scanned the area with all his eyes. He was in some kind of open space when Karsego suddenly appeared. The guy shouted and asked him what was going on with him at all. Karsego replied that the guy was asking the wrong questions. Instead, it would be better for him to ask what he should do. The guy asked what he should do, and his past life replied that he should become stronger than anyone in this world. Hyun-jung only has an F rank, and he really has become stronger since their last training, but Karsego interrupted the guy by hitting his staff hard on the ground. Yellow lightning flashed around. The young man looked at it and could not believe that Karsego had cut the sky. The man told him that he would be able to stand on top. A bright blue mana crystal has appeared, which is the core of monsters. People in the guy's world use it as fuel. The two stood opposite each other, and the man showed what else could be done with this core. Tissues began to form around the stone, and eventually a large green troll appeared. The guy definitely did not expect this. Karsego ordered the guy to raise his shield because this would be his second training session. He will have to try to survive. The troll rushed at the guy and he cursed and quickly put up a shield in front of him. Karsego started deliberately provoking Zhang, saying that he had an unfavorable position because he was a step behind. The troll attacked the guy, and even the shield didn't help him. He flew back a few meters while the man was counting how many times the young man had already been hit. As many as 50 times the guy was defeated. And in this scenario he would have died as many as 70 times. Zhang thought to himself that it takes a huge swing to attack with a shield, and it will be difficult for him to even injure a troll. He is in a hopeless situation. Objectively, the troll is much stronger than the guy, and he also changes the trajectories of his attacks very quickly, so if the guy does not kill him with one blow, then he is a corpse. Hyun-jung lifted the burning shield into the air with the thought that even though it would be weaker than Karsego's protection, the guy soared up and flew at the green monster with all his might, knocking him down with one blow. Landing on one knee, the guy muttered in disbelief that he was able to kill the monster. Standing aside, Karsego was impressed, and the guy asked him why he was helping him. Karsego replied that the guy would eventually understand everything himself. Once in a large cave, the guy could not understand how he got there. He sat down and began to feel his body for wounds, but even after those beatings, his body remained untouched. He saw the crystal on the floor and, taking it in his hands, realized that he would receive quite a large sum for this little thing. He's completely confused about what's going on, but first he needs to get out of the cave alive. He saw snow-white doors in front of him that looked like the door of the boss room. Going inside, he found himself in a clean room with many columns, burning orange eyes, and some noise appeared from somewhere in the darkness. In front of the guy was a skeleton warrior in full uniform and twice as big as the guy himself. Zhang cursed with gusto at the dead team that was evaluating this dungeon, because no one could have guessed that there were so many skeletons here. Standing in a fighting stance, the guy asked himself if he could defeat this monster alone. Karsego's voice in his head asked if he doubted. He must stop being afraid and never doubt the light of his power again. When Karsego's defense was activated at full power, the guy moved on the skeleton. Hyun-jung quickly realized that it was useless to fight the skeleton closely, so he had to keep his distance so that it would open. Is the radius of his attack so huge? Hyun-jung was able to defend himself with his shield from the blow, but he still ended up on the floor. It's not fair that the monster turned out to be so strong. The guy clenched his hands into fists with the thought that his mana was running out and he would only withstand a couple of blows. The skeleton hit the guy again and he flew back. Each attack of the monster was deadly, but the guy manages to dodge. He waited for the perfect moment to attack and attacked the skeleton, whose arm fell off. He couldn't believe it, and since the skeleton doesn't take damage, it's too unprofitable for the guy to prolong the fight. The skeleton continued the fight with the semblance of a hand, and did not stop attacking the guy while he was holding on with the last of his strength. Each time the monster gets faster and faster, but when compared with the spear of Karsego, it is still tolerable. The guy pushed off in the hope of piercing the monster through and the skeleton was defeated. He fell to the ground while the guy was standing over him and was glad that it was over. His whole face was covered in wounds and scratches from endless fights, but the main thing was that he defeated such a big monster. Meanwhile, in the very clearing where Zhang came that time, everything was fenced off with police tape and a man was standing near a large bright portal. He was talking to someone on the phone and said that it had been 3 days since the gate to the dungeon opened. Given that there is no news about their cleanup, most likely all the members of the squad died. If this is really the case, then the monsters can come out, so you need to prepare everything necessary for the siege of the dungeon. A rapid response team has already been sent to the crime scene and as soon as they arrive, they will need to be told to go inside. The man who was on the phone noticed a silhouette in the depths of the portal and said into the phone that someone had just cleared the dungeon. Hyun-jun, tired and wounded, came out of the portal. The man asked him where the rest of the hunters had gone, to which the guy croaked that they had all died. The man introduced himself as Park Young-ho from the dungeon administration. He asked the guy for his hunter's ID and was very surprised when he turned out to be F rank. At this time, in a large office, a man was eating a delicious donut with unprecedented pleasure when his office was broken into. The manager looked sullenly at the Puck who had disturbed him and asked what had happened. He just recently sent a dungeon clearing squad, and he's already back. Pak replied that most likely, a hunter appeared who was able to wake up again. The manager abruptly stood up and leaned his hands on the table. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Park replied that the F-ranked hunter Kang Hyun-jun is the only one who returned alive from the elite B-rank dungeon. The manager clarified with the man that the guy is barely standing on his feet after he returned from the dungeon, and he claims that he woke up for the second time. To make sure of this, they have to do some research. The manager expressed, saying that even among the S-ranked hunters, only a few were able to awaken a second time. So Puck just has to get back to his work. The guy was dissatisfied with this decision of the manager. He asked Puck if he knew how much it costs to reawaken the hunter. Will he be able to take responsibility for his words? Instead of making useless efforts, he just has to do what he is told. If it's not a reawakening, then it just doesn't make any sense. Rather than trust this damn manager, Puck would do everything himself, and left the office. Seeing the bright light above him, Jong stretched out his hand to the top, surprised that he had survived at all. He's so tired that he just wants to die. Closing his eyes, he could not understand what kind of strange feeling overcame him. There was a voice in his head that supposedly greeted him. It was that man in the purple suit, and the guy asked him, is he also one of his past lives? The interlocutor replied that it did not matter because he could have died. The guy already knew about it, so he demanded an answer to his question. The guy in the hood laughed and said that although Hyun looked weak, he had a lot of courage. Now it is clear why Karsego was interested in him. It seems no wonder he came here instead of Miller. The man introduced himself as Kasashin, and he chose the shortest way to meet the guy. He just needs to know that the rest of the lives also wanted to see the guy first. But when he faces future dangers, Hasashin will prove that he is much more useful than everyone else. Enough talking, it's time to start the lesson. The guy was surprised by Kasashin's form while he was voicing a plan of action. He will aim at the guy's heart. If he can avoid his attack at least once, the lesson will be over. He is already very curious about how many times this guy will die. The spear flew straight into the guy's heart, not reaching the end. Kasashin laughed and said with a sweet smile on his face that the lesson was over. The stronger Hyun becomes, the more heinous actions he will be caught. For example, the director of the Shadow Guilds, Zhang, was standing at the front desk in front of a woman. She greeted him and asked how she could help. The guy groaned to himself from fatigue and the desire to get home as soon as possible. He dumped a bag of crystals in front of the girl and said that he would like to sell them and evaluate the value of his shield. The girl with the bun replied that it looked like the guy had cleaned out a B-rank dungeon. There will be a little more than 20 million won. The assessment fee is 1 million won. There is no free appraiser now, so does the guy want to wait? The guy thought that the appraiser was somehow too expensive, and at that time the girl had already asked him for a hunter's license. She thanked him for his cooperation while reading his card. I asked him to sit down and wait a little, because when everything is ready, she will call him. While Hyun-jun was sitting on a bench, staring in front of him, the girl was talking to someone on the phone. She told someone that the survivor from the dungeon had come. The man in the suit opened a correspondence with Hai-jin and wrote to her. She has not answered for a long time, and therefore the man asked his assistant to check what was wrong with that dungeon. And he immediately rushed to execute the order. He called the dungeon administration and soon turned to the director. He announced with a tremor in his voice that all the hunters from the dungeon had died. The manager turned abruptly and did not understand. The assistant went on to say that there was only one survivor left. When Zhang was sitting and yawning, a man approached him. He recognized the one from the dungeon administration, Park Young-ho. The man has to tell the guy something very important and offered to go to another place for a conversation. Soon they were sitting on a bench and Park was holding some kind of folder, thanking the guy for the testimony with which they would be able to complete the investigation. He handed Zhang a card that said he was now a S-Raga hunter. Park replied with a smile on his face that he thought he was much stronger, but that was all he could do. The guy muttered that it was enough. I thanked the man for his care. A man in a suit stood in his office and looked out the window at the night city. He turned to his assistant Hyun-suk and said that he hates losing what belongs to him the most. Is he sure there is one survivor? Hyun Seok should bring him to the manager. Hyun Jun and Seok-gu were sitting in a restaurant and drinking together. Seok-gu congratulated his friend on having a C rank now, and Hyun asked how he knew, because he doesn't work in the hunters department. The friend replied that Jong is now quite famous in the dungeon administration. Everyone is talking about the only surviving porter in an elite dungeon. Jong couldn't understand what was so strange about him. Seok-gu started talking about how there was another such case similar to this one. In general, this happens rarely and only with awakened hunters. The most famous of them is SS rank Han Jin-woo. Nowadays, when they say Asura, people think of the supreme guild of the country. However, it was founded by Han Jin-woo, the only survivor of the dungeon, recognized as an awakened hunter. He is the first and only SS rank hunter in this country who helped the guild become famous. The Asura guild is now called the Diamond Layer, and there are rumors that Han Jin-woo is an extremely unpleasant person. But it seems that they take good care of him there since he does not leave the guild. Seok-gu asked a friend if the dungeon administration had already contacted him, because he was supposed to get a special job offer. Jong replied that he had not received any job offer. Drinking a shot of soju in one gulp, Seok-gu said that their manager has no manners, because usually people like Hyun get messages from them. He shouldn't let the administration treat him like that. After Jin-woo survived, he was promoted all the way to a rank. And Hyun has already suffered a lot, starting with the fact that he is an orphan. While Hyun was pouring another one more and more, he asked to stop talking about it. After a while, Hyun Jun was hailing a taxi for his drunk friend. He, in a drunken voice, told the guy that everything would be fine now. After making sure that the friend got into the car, the guy walked home, because he also needed a good rest. He walked unhurriedly while there was purple smoke around him. He suspected for a long time that these two were following him and told them not to hide. It was in him that Kosishin supposedly spoke. Two men in black uniforms came out of the shadows. One of them, bald with a cigarette, said that the guy should go with them. If he doesn't want it in a good way, then it will be in a bad way. He pulled out a sword from his spatial pocket, which surprised the guy very much. The guy immediately changed tactics and chattered why immediately get a weapon and asked where to go then. The bald man approved the decision of a guy who at least thinks sensibly. At this time, Hyun continued to speak, or rather Hasishin for him that they say, so they thought he would say, "All these bastards are the same. They made a huge mistake today." The second guy attacked Jong with the words that it would be better if he just went with them. He started swinging his swords, confident that he had wounded the guy, but the knife did not receive any recoil. Hot guy and F rank, but he still knows a couple of moves. The guy swung again, but Jong was behind him and asked where he was looking. Looking at all this, the bald man did not understand how he knew how to use the aura. Hyun took and pierced the second guy through just with his hand, taking his knife with him for a while. He turned to the bald man and asked what he was doing there. He thought that this was an unusual guy and he would not give him a chance to strike back. Han very easily evaded the attacks of the bald man, and he could not understand how he moved so quickly from place to place. He's so fast and only hits the pain points. Standing over the man, Jong asked who he was and then perhaps he would spare his life. The opponent will not give up so easily, and Hyun replied that he asked only out of politeness. He got to his feet with the words that it would be inconvenient if there were any clues left. Hasishin's darkness removes all the evidence around. Leaving the place of bluntness, he thought that all this turned out to be easier as he thought. When he got home, the guy complained to himself for drinking again, because he doesn't remember how he got home. Already lying in a clean bed, he thought that since he had arrived safely, then everything was fine. He's so tired again. All he can do is rest. The very next morning, standing at the stove and cooking ramen, his phone rang and it was Seok-gu. He informed the guy that he had found a group for him and he should come immediately. Suddenly the guy gets very angry and rushes out of the house. While he was sitting in a taxi, the driver was watching him suspiciously, because the guy was literally sweating with anger. And then everything suddenly caught fire. Jong quickly fell out of the car, falling on the asphalt with all his might. The car crashed into a pillar at speed and everything around was in black smoke, from which an orc sorcerer suddenly appeared. And his whole army came after him. It just can't be. In the middle of the day, and even on the street, where there are a lot of people, has the gate opened. The orc muttered something incomprehensible in his own language. His warriors also shouted and a complete mess began. The guy looked at all this from the side and realized that at this rate he would be late for his meeting. He rushed at the leader to deal with him faster. On his way, the guy fought off the others with his shield, but there was no end to these small fry. Jong attacked the troll with a big jump and he fell to the ground. People turned to look in disbelief. If Hyun continues like this, he will definitely be late. Praise was heard from behind, and seeing that the guy does not belong to any guild, they gave him a business card. His abilities are too good to waste. Hyun was holding the Ace Guild's business card. They were quite famous. But for starters, a crowd of people ran out of a building nearby, shouting and calling for help. The guy couldn't believe that monsters had also appeared in the mall. Although there is a mandatory point, they say hunters are obliged to intervene if the gate opens. But no matter how strong he is, fighting all these orcs face to face is too risky. He remembered his friend's words about the man who had been promoted to a rank and thought that if he could, he would be promoted to a rank. When he entered a large shopping center, everything inside was blazing with a terrible fire. He asked if there was anyone inside, and the fact that there are no glasses inside is very alarming to him. It felt like someone had already disposed of the corpses. Who could have done such a monstrous thing? A man holding his wounded shoulder approached him and asked the young man if he was a hunter. He asked the guy to get out of here as soon as possible because it is very dangerous. Zhang was looking at the man and apparently he was attacked. This sudden opening of the gate is different from what happens in the world. Most likely, someone is involved in this. Someone came and that wounded man asked if they were allies. However, this is not the case at all. Hyun-jun directly asked the guys who sent them, to which they replied that it was not necessary to know, because he was going to die. The guy asked if they were by any chance a special squad of the Echo Guild. The chief of the gang was surprised that they were known and ordered to kill these two. When Zhang was swung at, he bent backwards in his back and was able to avoid the blow. The gang got excited that the guy was using an aura, and realized that this brat is not so easy. You can't relax. There was a real massacre. Fists were waving around and Zhang dodged all the blows. These guys have killed before, as it turned out. One of them jumped on Zhang with a sword, calling him a worm monkey. But the blow did not happen because it was blocked. The guy asked the opponent if he had finished. The opponents decided to attack the guy together, but quickly got what they deserved. One stayed away and Zhang asked him if he was going to attack. The last opponent thought that the guy was definitely a monster, since he was capable of such a thing. His identity has been revealed, and now the guild will not be able to protect him. Since things have turned out this way, he will take the hostage with him. He threw a smoke grenade on the floor, ran at Zhang, but received a sword blow right in the heart. He started groaning and asked how this guy could. He's just already used to this kind of thing. The wounded man sitting by the wall was surprised that the guy alone coped with the special squad. He thanked the guy for saving him. And by the way, is he by any chance a rank hunter? The guy turned around and asked if it was important. The man said it didn't matter and asked the guy what his name was. He introduced himself as Kang Hyun-jun and informed the man about his departure, but he was stopped. The dungeon clearing team should have arrived by now. Even though he looks pathetic right now, but he's the head of the guild department, and he'll personally make sure that the guy is rewarded, so he should visit them sometime. Turning away from the speaker, Hyun-jun replied that he would think about it. The man's name was Kim Taemin. After a while, Hyun stood in front of the department building. Although the guy said he would think about it, but he claimed that he would definitely be rewarded, so there is no reason to refuse. The brunette called the same man and wanted to say that they had just recently met, but he was immediately interrupted because Kim recognized him by the head. The guy said that he was not far away and the man promised to meet him. I also asked if he had eaten. Later, they were sitting opposite each other in a restaurant and the man asked Zhang if he wanted anything else. He refused. The man handed him a bag and the guy asked if it was a spatial bag. Kim replied that yes, a special type. Inwardly, the young man wondered how the Bronze Guild could give such a valuable thing to an ordinary hunter. The man began to tell that they noticed his abilities, but he carries a weapon with him. The guy realized that Tom had something to offer him. He turned out to be very smart and therefore the man decided to get right to the point. He asked Zhang to help him with his guild. The guy was very surprised because he's just a C-rank hunter. However, it wasn't a problem because he had already shown what he was capable of. Therefore, the man urgently asks for his help. A voice in his head prompted him to use the man's request. But the guy did not understand who it was, because the voice was different from everyone he knew. The man said that soon they will have an unofficial war with the Echo Guild, which means a battle between two special squads, but differs from the unofficial war in that there are no judges, so you can kill your employees. The Reaper in his head advises the guy to accept this offer. The guy started asking questions. Isn't this guy really going to reward him? In any case, he should accept his offer. Should he find out more about it? Or let him slow down? The guy informed the man that he refused his offer. The spatial bag is of course good, but the guy will have to put his life on the line as well. It looks like they are completely desperate. They are asking him for help. The man sadly replied that he understood everything and asked how about their special squad helping him at any time. Hyun-jung liked it, but he still doubted the intentions. The guildmaster has already given his consent to help the guy. Then if everything is really like that, then the guy will gladly accept their offer. Again, that girl from the reception desk said that because of the long waiting list, it would be difficult for him to get into the C rank dungeon. Then Jong asked if it was possible to get into a dungeon with an even higher rank. According to the rules, he must be a hunter of a rank and above or part of a professional group to enter a high-ranking dungeon. The forecasts were not comforting, and the guy mumbled something dejectedly. So, a professional group. A little later, sitting behind a stoic in some diner, Kang Hyun-jung was looking at the business card of the Ace Guild. The girl with the high tail came up to him, who handed him a business card and greeted him. She was really waiting for him to contact them. The guy did not torment, but got straight to the point. He asked if they had a schedule of professional group raids. The girl was upset, because she thought that the guy wanted to join their guild. But then she said he should try it first. Their group is planning a raid on a B-rank dungeon. He can join too. They're leaving tomorrow. The next day, dressed in a beautiful uniform and a raincoat, Zhang stood at the door and waited for the group to come. A car drove up to him and the driver informed him that he was expected. Already sitting in the car, the guy was surprised that everything is different for professional groups. The girl in the next seat asked if it was cool and if he wanted to join them already. The guy thought the girl was kind of rude. Soon the driver reported that they had arrived at the place, and the guy was already feeling tired. He went out into some clearing and saw a group of people, most likely a professional ace group. And among them was Choi Han-seok, a rank hunter using magic. The girl standing next to Young called Han-seok as her oppo, which the guy was very surprised at. It turned out that they were brother and sister, and rushed to hug each other. They get along pretty well, by the looks of it. Isol introduced the guy to her brother, and he held out his palm and said that he was the leader of a professional group. With a happy smile on his face, Choi asked the guy if he was joining their group. The guy thought to himself that he hadn't said a word about the introduction yet. However, his thoughts were interrupted by a girl who began to agree with her brother. They were so excited at the thought of this guy joining their group. The guy looked at it and thought that this guild was kind of crazy. A man standing at the back called Hyun-jung and began to open the portal with a sword. He had heard that this was the first B-rank dungeon for a guy. In dungeons A, B and above, it is difficult to attack using conventional weapons, even though they will borrow it, but it's better than what the guy used before. The guy, twirling the sword in his hands, said that the weapon looked good, but he did not understand why they were doing it for him. The bald man replied that they had received an order. Aren't they one team now? The guy thanked the man and said he would try very hard. Meanwhile, the leader said that it was necessary to pass the final briefing. Their construction will look like this. Kang Hyun-jung will be in the rear, and if anything happens, they should listen to the leader's orders. It turned out that the guy would be Isul's personal security guard. Han-seok put his hand forward and a portal opened in front of them, into which he pushed them. It turned out to be a rank spatial magic. Later, when they were inside the dungeon, Han-seok informed them that they needed to start with the cleanup first. They saw burning creatures and the guy asked the leader if the monsters from the spiritual light were by chance. Han-seok used his magic to attack the monsters. His sister laughed and asked why he was constantly using useless magic singing, and her brother replied that it looked cool. The guy was impressed that he took out the monster with one blow. There are even more monsters and they have become more aggressive. It looks like they have made them very angry. It's time for them to get ready. Attacking as best they could, the team fought monsters. The leader attacked these leeches with a powerful stream of blue magic. That's what a real pro band means. It's just unbelievable. Zhang didn't think they were that good. Somewhere off to the side, a bald man said that this dungeon was small and everything would be fine if they just kept going forward. The guy thought their tactics were too cool. Walking in the dark, they talked about how it would be hard to defeat the boss. The leader encouraged his team, because they will certainly cope. Soon they found themselves in a large empty but clean hall, where there were columns everywhere. The candles seemed to have been extinguished only recently, and the leader ordered everyone to be careful. Out of nowhere, nightmares flew at them and Han-seok ordered everyone to line up urgently. There are 12 of them. Although they are B rank, there are too many of them. The scuffle started again endless energy emissions. Thanks to the leader, the number of monsters has decreased significantly. All the team members were very tired and the guy thought that they would have had a hard time without him. Danzig will take possession of the guy to strengthen his resolve. Putting the shield forward, the guy rushed into battle at the nightmare, and the leader shouted to him that if he destroyed the formation, The guy thought that there was no time for this and began to fight off the monsters. The leader decided to help him and released his magic. Zhang, as expected, the leader has a rank skills. He shouted to Hansuk to cover him, because he had to take care of the rest of the monsters himself. After a while, when there were no monsters left, they all stood in the hall, gathered in a bunch and wondered if this was the end. However, there was still a monster boss waiting for them ahead. The guy felt that something was coming, and then he blocked the monster's blow with his shield, which surprised the leader very much, because the guy used an aura. The guy looked at his left hand and realized that it would be very difficult for him to use it. The essence of Danzig in him has strengthened and his physical capabilities have greatly increased. He began to feel a certain power and just couldn't miss his chance. The leader asked his sister how much longer she would be able to cover for him, and she replied that 5 minutes was the maximum. That will be enough. Zhang rushed at the monster, but it was too strong. We'll have to stop mining his mana crystals and strike at the core. Soon the guy found the very core. The leader was shocked by what he saw. Was this the power of an awakened hunter? If Kang Hyunjun is going to join their guild. Sok sat down in front of the wounded fighter and asked if he was okay. Once it's over, he'll call a medic right away. The guy thought it was better to leave now, because he might be forced to join the group. And he said that he would go first, since he was no longer needed. The leader was sorry, but he was ready for this. Zhang told them to make sure he was paid. Soon he received a notification about the transfer of money. Lying in bed, the guy did not expect that he would be paid so much as 50 million won. He's so tired. Somewhere in his dream, the last holy sword awaits him. The sword stuck in the floor sparkled with blue lightning. He didn't even look bad and the voice in the guy's head was telling him to pick it up. The guy pulled out a sword and began to twist it in his hand. It was just great. Zhang has a sharp eye for a beginner. One of his past lives was coming to him. Sidon Miller, the holy sword. A blonde man with armor appeared. The guy washed away that he looks very familiar. Miller asked if the guy could use the sword aura. He remembers the times when he was in the guy's body. The guy remembered that it was in a fight with skeletons in the first dungeon. He should remember this feeling. It was as if he was using the aura of a shield. Looking at the guy, Miller was surprised that Carsago had trained him better than he expected. Swinging the sword from side to side, the guy said that it does not feel like a shield. This aura is difficult for him to control. Miller said there was nothing to be done and he would only help him. Standing slightly behind Zhang, Miller stuck out his hand so that he could memorize the flow of his magic. It was very difficult for the guy to cope with the energy, but Sidon told him not to resist and accept the sword. This is a magical resonance, and in reality the guy would have died long ago. The guy thought that the aura was completely different and he didn't care, so let Miller do it again. The past life agreed and they repeated their actions. Upon graduation, Miller realized that the other past lives were right and the guy is really good. And it looks like he will even be able to become a master of using the sword aura. Now Miller is ready to show what he is capable of. He took the sword and started doing various manipulations with it, waving from side to side, and eventually stopped and asked the guy if he could repeat it. Having coped with Carsago's training, Zhang was completely confident that he could cope with this one. At least he'll try. In the end, everything turned out quite well. On this note, they need to finish training and the guy asked if they could meet again. Only if the guy is ready. Looking after the departing guy, Miller hoped that this time everything would work out. The next day, Hyunjun stood in a green clearing among the trees and practiced with a sword. He tried to remember the movements that were in the dream, tried to remember everything that Miller showed him. The unofficial guild war is very soon and he needs to continue training. Only in this way will he be able to become even stronger. The day of unofficial war has come. Sitting in the backseat of a black car, Kang Hyunjun asked Kim Taemin what their strength was at the moment. Including Kim, they have 2 B-ranked hunters and 4 C-ranked ones. And as for the Echo Guild, based on the reports of the scouts, their fighters have no chance against the enemies. As he said earlier, they can't do it without the guy's help. Zhang pondered over the man's words, but the man continued to speak. They are in a difficult situation, and all they can do is completely trust the guy. He replied that it sounded good if they could lend him some change of clothes. Later, already standing in a bulletproof vest, Hyunjun had the feeling that they were ambushed. Everything looks like some kind of performance, and he is not very happy about it. As soon as they enter this place, an unofficial war will begin. Putting masks on their heads, the team moved forward and the guy asked himself if he should use his strength. Ignoring the calls, he rushed forward, because first he had to get rid of those who were waiting for him in ambush. With all his might, he attacked the opponents who were sitting in the shadows, while his team was at a loss from the fact that he dealt with 2 enemies at once with 1 blow. It looks like this guy is the only one who can save their guild. The head of the enemies looked at the fight and thought that since they took a mercenary, it was very good, but it would not help them. And he ordered his soldiers to go on the offensive. Kim Taemin ordered his men to help Hyun-jun and the massacre began. The sounds of broken bones, flying bodies, and swinging fists resounded everywhere. There was complete confusion around. Everyone threatened each other, wanted to die. The head of the enemies clicked and said that he would do everything himself. Defeating another opponent, Hyun-jun saw that the commander of the enemy team was entering the battle himself. Once they get rid of the commander, the rest will not be difficult. Zhang will fight in full force. Fighting with the commander, the guy realized that he was different from the rest of the soldiers. A mercenary using an aura at this level. They continued to fight and the commander shouted to his men to continue fighting. Because without this guy, the guild is nothing. Someone released a fiery stream and the guy barely managed to cover himself with his shield so as not to burn. The commander jumped on him with a knife, and I told the guy to give up because he lost. Looking to the side, the guy saw that all the fighters were defeated. The outcome of the battle was a foregone conclusion because they didn't have a single chance against them. If he surrenders, his life will be spared. Zhang replied that the commander was right. He was tired of all this, constantly running away. The commander gave the guy a chance, but he did not take advantage of it and he needs to be killed urgently. They all started fighting Hyun-jun and he was very exhausted. His mana was running out. He started calling on his past lives, Karsago, Hasishin and Miller, and from the outside it looked very strange. The enemies looked at him and thought that he had gone mad after seeing that all his comrades had fallen. The guy was in a panic trying to figure out why no one was answering and helping him. The commander replied that no one would help him, because it was not for nothing that this place was chosen for the battle. Raising his sword to the sky, Zhang shouted for help from at least someone, and someone heard him. The guy's thirst for blood awakened the Reaper and his intentions to kill appeared. The voice of the Reaper immediately rang in my head, who said that the guy's crying could be heard even in hell. He must immediately raise his sword and kill everyone. Let the Reaper hear their farewell cry. Hyun-jun's mana has started to recover and it will definitely be enough to continue fighting with opponents. He began to attack and the sweet smell of blood excites the Reaper. The awakened instinct makes the guy a murderer, thirsty for blood. After all these years, the smell of blood. The Reaper will lead the guy to his weak points. He ordered the extermination of all enemies immediately. The guy asked what are the weak points, are these the same red dots on their bodies? In any case, this battle will be easy. After a while, there are only 2 opponents left and with the power of the Reaper, the guy will be able to deal with them quickly. The commander swore and could not understand what was happening, because it simply could not be. Why are his fighters stuck? They should hurry up and attack the guy. They started attacking her with renewed vigor. However, Zhang can still see their weaknesses. Some guy was determined to break this idiot's sword into pieces, but he got himself in the stomach with it. Did he really think he could grab the aura sword with his bare hands and stay fine? The leader should hurry to help in overcoming this guy, but he reflected his strength with his shield. Did they think he only had a sword? The enemies could not believe that their leader was carried out with one blow, and he would drive away, hitting a tree. Surely this guy isn't a rank hunter, otherwise they would not have been able to defeat the leader so easily. They need to get out of this battle urgently. Standing over the guy, Kang Hyun-jun asked if he was going to quit his guild. Meanwhile, the Reaper was watching everything and saw one alive. He ordered the guy to kill them all. In an unofficial war between guilds, the battle lasts until one of the sides is destroyed. So the guy has to kill them all. However, the enemy has already lost all desire to fight. The Reaper was indignant. Why did the guy freeze? We need to cut the leader's throat. It's not the first time he's done this, so why is he pretending to be innocent? From the very beginning, Zhang didn't want to kill. It was already the middle of the night outside. A bright and large moon illuminated everything around. The guy approached his team, which was moving away from the battle. Kim asked him if the war was over and if they had a chance of winning. The guy replied that they were, but he took them away. Kim knew Hyun-jun was skilled, but he didn't think that so. At least 6 people are alive. Does that mean he blew them all up? Although the man had assumptions, but he did not think that Hyun was so strong. He took the guy's hands in his and sincerely thanked him for his help. Do not regret that the enemies are killed. The guy should remember that there are people who are alive thanks to him. Now that the guild war is over, Kim asked to transfer the payment to the guy and he should check if it came to him. Taking out his phone, Zhang mentally promised himself that he would never get involved in something as dangerous again. 150 million won was transferred to his card. He was pleasantly shocked. The assistant who flew into the director's office informed Tom that he could not contact the manager. The director was angry at such news and asked who he could not contact yet. He replied that he could not get in touch with any of them. The director could not believe that all his fighters had disappeared somewhere. The poor assistant was sweating with nerves. He started saying that the only mercenaries of the Lace Guild. The director abruptly interrupted him and ordered him to immediately get the name of the bastard who dealt with them. They don't want to disappoint their patron, do they? We need to take good care of him. Lying out of bed, Hyun-jung still couldn't believe that he had received so much money from one guild war. However, he had to risk his life for this sum. He looked at the photo from the shelter that hung on his wall and thought that he would have done much more for them. Carrying a large red gift box, Jong hoped that the children from the orphanage would really like his gifts. He knocked on the door and went into the director's office to check on him. However, there he found a girl with beautiful wheat hair. It was Seo-jin Nuna. They haven't seen each other for so long. But where is the director then? The girl replied that she had not been feeling well lately, so she was helping. The guy asked if the woman was getting worse again. Unfortunately, she is not getting younger. Their dialogue was interrupted by an elderly woman who came into the office with her hands behind her back. She told Seo-jin not to worry because she has to work as a supportive hunter. The girl asked the woman to take care of her health. The woman grumbled in response so that she did not teach her to live, and asked the guy if everything was all right with him. He said everything was fine and she should take better care of herself. Then Jong turned to Nuna and asked, isn't she busy with raids? The woman sighed heavily. Although with her help, so became a C-rank hunter. The girl is fine and she does what she likes. Helping out at the shelter and going on raids must be very difficult. Nuna shouldn't overwork herself. The woman pointed to a large box with a bow and said that Hyun-jung shouldn't have brought so much with him. He brought gifts and some snacks, which he overdid again, but the guy didn't want to listen to nothing. The women stared at him and asked with what money he had bought it all, and the guy replied that he had been promoted to C rank and given a generous payout. The old lady is very proud of the guy who just got lucky. With suspicion, she asked him if he was doing anything dangerous. Of course not, don't worry, Jong replied. He asked where the children were because he wanted to give them his gifts. When the door closed behind the guys, the director went to the window and mumbled nostalgically that once this guy was such a baby, and now he has become a real man. She remembered how she and Nana played together, ran around celebrating getting the F rank. They say that with age you start poking your nose into other people's affairs more. On the street, So asked a friend what the director was talking about and if everything was really okay. Jong replied that everything was fine and she also shouldn't worry about the shelter's debts because he would take care of everything. The boy ran up to them, followed by everyone else. They were all very happy about the arrival of their Hyung, and especially the gifts he brought. They started jumping and running around the guy, begging for their gifts, and when the box was in the hands of the boys, they quickly began to look at everything. The guy was jokingly offended that the children were more happy with toys than him, and they immediately rushed to hug him from all sides. Of course they are happy to see their Hyung. They love him very much. The director went outside and called the boys to eat pizza, which the guy brought. Overtaking each other, the children ran inside while Jong was upset about losing to pizza. Admitting defeat, he took the little boy in his arms and called Nuna to eat too. Sitting in the large dining room, everyone was eating delicious pizza, and the guy just watched them with a smile and told them not to hurry, and if suddenly someone didn't have enough, he would definitely buy more. Suddenly Kasushin warned him that someone was watching him. The guy started up and shouted to everyone to immediately lie down under the table. He took out his shield and took cover from the fierce fire.